Imagine this for a second. You give consent, right, for your 10-year-old to join the very first permanent human settlement on Mars.
Wow.
Sounds incredible, this huge leap for humanity. But then you find out this whole settlement, this pioneering venture, was designed with basically zero thought for child safety.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no real protection from radiation, low gravity messing with development, causing potential deformities. It's a chilling analogy Jonathan Haidt uses
Really?
to describe what it's like for kids growing up on Earth today.
It's such a powerful image, isn't it? Makes you
Yeah.
just stop and think. Haidt's point is that we've maybe inadvertently launched our kids into this environment they're just not equipped for.
Completely unprepared.
Yeah. And this is what he's calling the great rewiring of childhood, this really radical, fundamental shift in how kids grow up. And the consequences, well, they're showing up as this dramatic, undeniable surge in anxiety, depression, even self-harm among adolescents.
And that's exactly what we're doing today, taking a deep dive into this. Our mission really is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge from Jonathan Haidt's very compelling new book, The Anxious Generation.
Mm.
We want to give you a shortcut, basically, to being really well-informed about this critical issue, this mental health crisis among young people that, let's be honest, many of us are seeing firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll explore the evidence, which is pretty undeniable. We'll try to unravel the underlying causes. And maybe most importantly, look at actual concrete solutions.
Yeah.
Things governments, tech companies, schools, even us as parents can actually do to help, bring childhood back down to earth.
Okay, so let's jump right into the data then, because wow, it is stark. We're looking at what Haidt calls this unprecedented, just tidal wave of suffering, and it's particularly concentrated among Gen Z, so kids born after 1995.
Right.
He presents updated data building on his earlier work, and it shows this unmistakable, hockey stick shape upturn in major depressive episodes.
Yeah, that graph is something else.
For U.S. teens, ages 12 to 17. And the shift, it starts really suddenly, right around 2012.
And what's really striking looking at that data is how much larger the increase was for girls compared to boys,
Huge difference.
both in just the sheer numbers and how steep that hockey stick curve is for them.
Oh.
And this surge, it's heavily concentrated in what clinicians call internalizing disorders.
So that's anxiety, depression.
Exactly. Where individuals feel distress inwardly, they might withdraw. It's different from, say, externalizing disorders, where you might see more aggression or acting out.
And this isn't just happening in the U.S., right? College students, particularly Gen Z students, saw anxiety and depression diagnoses just skyrocket through the 2010s. And wider surveys back this up. It's concentrated in Gen Z, maybe a bit of spillover to younger millennials, but older generations. Pretty much flat.
It really makes you ask, what part of this trend just screams urgency? For me, honestly, it's the data on self-harm and suicide. It's just heartbreaking.
It's awful.
Emergency room visits for self-harm, they nearly tripled for young adolescent girls. We're talking ages 10 to 14 between 2010 and 2020.
10 to 14. So young.
And even more tragically, the suicide rate for that exact same group, it jumped by a staggering 167% between 2010 and 2021.
Wow.
That specific, really disproportionate impact on preteen and young teen girls, that's a major clue Haidt keeps coming back to as we try to figure out the root causes.
It's absolutely chilling to see those numbers laid out. It just underscores how urgent this is. Now, when you have a crisis this big, people naturally try to explain it away, don't they, with common theories. But Haidt, he really meticulously debunks quite a few of them.
He does.
Take the idea that it's economic factors. The big financial crisis hit in 2009, right?
Right.
So if that was the main driver, you'd expect millennials to be hit harder, and you'd see the decline then, not the sudden rise in the mid-2010s. Plus, it just doesn't explain the gender gap at all. Why girls?
Exactly. It doesn't line up.
Yeah.
Or the argument about, big world events or climate change anxiety being the main culprit. Historically, things like major national threats, wars, sometimes even terrorism, they often increase social cohesion, give people a sense of shared purpose, which, perhaps surprisingly, can actually lead to a reduction in suicide rates sometimes.
Interesting.
And modern activism, well, sometimes it's even linked to worse mental health outcomes for the individuals involved. Haidt's critical point here is it's not necessarily the events themselves.
It's the delivery system.
Precisely. It's how they are constantly, relentlessly pumped into adolescents' brains via their phones, creating this state of chronic, inescapable anxiety.
Yeah, that constant feed. And what I found really, really compelling in his argument was the international synchronization.
Ah, yes.
That's crucial.
This same sharp decline in mental health after 2010-2012, you see it not just in the U.S., but for across other Anglo countries, UK, Canada, Australia, and even in Nordic nations, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, places with really different social systems, different economies.
Different safety nets, yeah. Exactly. So this synchronization across such diverse cultures points really strongly towards a common global cause, right? Something beyond specific national events.
It's a very powerful piece of evidence for a shared global phenomenon, isn't it? And to understand that phenomenon, Haidt argues we need to go back to basics. We need to look at the decline of what he calls the play-based childhood.
Right. The foundation.
Yeah. Humans, we evolved this uniquely long childhood. Our brains hit about 90% of their adult size by age 5, but then they take many more years to really configure themselves to integrate all the complex functions. This long period is essential for what he calls cultural learning, for properly integrating into society.
And this idea of childhood having this specific evolved purpose, it's fascinating, especially because it kind of pushes against our modern instincts, to constantly supervise, structure everything.
Totally.
But hundreds of studies, not just on humans, but across mammals, they clearly show that play is, quite literally, the work of childhood.
It's not optional.
No. Kids deprived of enough free play, they end up impaired socially, cognitively, emotionally, and free play, specifically meaning activity that's freely chosen, directed by the kids themselves, without adults constantly jumping in or setting some external goal.
That's the key distinction.
Yeah, that's where they learn vital skills. Conflict resolution, self-governance, cooperation. They learn it through trial and error in a low-stakes environment where mistakes aren't catastrophic.
And this even extends to something often misunderstood, even feared today. Risky play.
Right, climbing trees, wrestling.
Exactly. Play researchers like Peter Gray, they argue that physical play, ideally outdoors with mixed ages, and yes, with some degree of physical risk, is actually essential.
Essential, not just nice to have.
Right. Think about those thrilling experiences, climbing high, wrestling, jumping off a swing. They have what Gray calls antiphobic effects. They teach kids how to judge risk, how to handle it, how to assess their own capabilities. It builds competence, confidence, courage, ultimately.
But when adults are constantly directing, constantly overprotecting,
then play becomes much less beneficial. Kids aren't getting those chances to calibrate risk for themselves, to learn their own limits.
which is just not the reality for most kids today, is it? The data shows this slow decline in U.S. students meeting friends almost every day outside school, starting back in the 90s.
The gradual slide?
Which then just accelerated incredibly rapidly in the 2010s. And this is what Haidt means by the Great Rewiring. An entire generation moving, en masse, from the real world into the virtual one.
And what's really insightful is how this shift impacts our actual brain function. Our brains have evolved systems for approaching opportunities. Haidt calls this discover mode.
Like exploring, learning.
Yeah. And systems for defending against threats, which he calls defend mode. Hypervigilance anxiety.
Okay.
Now, a childhood rich in free real-world play tends to wire our brains primarily for that discover mode. But a phone-based childhood, it profoundly shifts children towards defend mode.
I see.
Characterized by chronic anxiety, hypervigilance, maybe less secure attachment. And this, he argues, helps explain that dramatic cultural shift people noticed on college campuses around 2014. Students becoming much more anxious, less tolerant of challenging ideas, more focused on safety.
And it ties directly into that concept of anti-fragility, doesn't it?
Exactly. Just like our immune systems need exposure to germs to get stronger.
You need the challenges.
Yes.
Yeah.
Children need exposure to setbacks, failures, minor stumbles, disagreements even, to develop strength and self-reliance. Overprotection, especially when combined with this phone-based life, it interferes with that natural crucial process. It makes young people more fragile, more fearful, instead of resilient.
Which brings us to another really key part of the backstory, the rise of what Haidt calls paranoid parenting and safetyism.
Right. Two sides of the same coin, almost.
He argues that since the 90s, Western societies made these two, contradictory but equally damaging choices.
Hey, were they?
We became radically overprotective of kids in the real world, even though crime rates were actually falling.
Right. The perception versus reality gap.
Exactly. While simultaneously, we completely underprotected them online, exposing them to immense harm there.
That's a stark contrast when you put it like that.
Sociologists like Frank Furedi talked about this rise of paranoid parenting, especially in Anglo countries, fueled by things like the 24/7 news cycle amplifying rare dangers, maybe declining social cohesion, fewer eyes on the street.
Less community connection.
Yeah, and those stranger danger, moral panics. Parents, kind of understandably, lost trust in each other, even in their own kids' abilities. And then you layer on the concept creep of safety.
Ah, safetyism.
Yeah. The term expanded from just physical safety to emotional safety, this idea of a right not to feel negative emotions because of something someone else said. This leads to safetyism, where safety becomes this almost sacred ultimate value, often trumping other important things like, well, developing resilience or critical thinking.
And the practical outcome of all this?
Yeah.
A profound loss of autonomy for children. Surveys show parents today set much, much higher age limits for unsupervised play than their own parents did for them.
Keeping kids on base constantly.
Exactly. And this hinders the development of what psychologists call a secure attachment style, where kids internalize support, learn they can cope, and face adversity independently. They're missing out on those crucial small mistakes, those challenges that are actually essential for growth and, self-efficacy.
Okay, so we have this foundation laid out, less free play, more real-world overprotection. Now, let's get into the great rewiring itself, the direct impact of the phone-based childhood.
Right, the pivot point.
Around the early 2010s, smartphones, which really took off after the iPhone in '07 and the App Store in '08, and social media platforms, especially with features like Facebook's like button in '09.
The little dopamine hits.
Exactly. They fundamentally transformed things. Phones went from being these useful multi-purpose tools like a Swiss Army knife
Yeah, handy gadgets.
to platforms meticulously designed to maximize eyeball time. For advertising, basically. And children, with their still developing frontal cortices, the part responsible for impulse control, long-term planning, they are just uniquely vulnerable to this design.
Utterly vulnerable. And Haidt identifies 4 foundational harms that stem directly from this shift. And what's really crucial isn't just looking at them individually, but seeing how they interact, how they create this feedback loop that traps young people.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, social deprivation. Teens started spending an extra 2 to 3 hours a day on screens.
Wow. Additional hours.
Additional, and daily in-person time with friends. It dropped sharply, especially for the youngest teens. Now, teens might assume, oh, friendships just moved online, right?
Yeah, that feels like the common assumption.
But the research consistently shows the opposite. Increased social media use correlates with higher depression and anxiety, while time spent in actual group activities like sports, clubs, whatever, that improves mental health.
So the quality matters immensely.
Hugely. And even when kids are physically together, smartphones just damage the quality of that in-person time, leads to isolation even when you're in the same room.
Oh, I see this constantly. Students sitting right next to each other before class, just silently scrolling on their phones. It's genuinely unnerving.
It is. Okay, second harm, sleep deprivation.
Oh, a big one.
Huge. Natural sleep patterns shift during puberty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teens biologically want to go to bed later and wake up later.
But school start times don't budge?
Exactly. So they're already sleep deprived. But data from after 2013 shows a significant increase in teens getting less than 7 hours of sleep. And there's really strong evidence, both correlational and causal, linking high social media use and late-night screen time directly to poor sleep.
And poor sleep affects everything.
Everything. Concentration, grades, mood.
Yeah.
Increases irritability, anxiety. It's a vicious cycle.
Okay, what's number 3?
Third is attention fragmentation. Haidt argues tech companies are basically in a race to the bottom of the brainstem, meaning they're competing to hijack our most primal, basic attention mechanisms, using design tricks like the slot machine pull to refresh or infinite scroll to treat these mini addictions, hacking our natural desire for social validation.
Keeping us hooked.
Constantly. Adolescents with those immature frontal lobes, they get bombarded with hundreds of notifications daily. One study found an average of 192 alerts per day.
192.
Yeah. It makes sustained focus incredibly difficult. How can you concentrate when your brain is constantly being pulled away by these little digital off-ramps?
And it's not just about actually checking the phone, is it?
No. Research shows the mere presence of a phone nearby, even if it's off or silent, it actually damages cognitive performance.
Oh.
And problematic social media use is directly linked to ADHD symptoms, especially in younger adolescent girls. It can seriously interfere with the development of executive function, those crucial mental skills for planning, organizing, managing tasks.
Okay, so social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation. What's the fourth foundational harm?
The fourth is addiction, plain and simple. Social media, video games, they leverage principles from behaviorist psychology.
Senior boxes and all that?
Sort of, yeah. The idea of reinforcing behaviors.
Right.
Using dopamine release to create craving, compulsion, wearing smooth that path in the brain, as Thorndike put it.
Right.
And they use what's called a variable ratio schedule of rewards. Think of a slot machine. You don't know when the payoff is coming, which makes you keep pulling the lever.
The most addictive kind of reward schedule.
Exactly. It creates the strongest, most persistent behaviors. It's why those bottomless feeds are so hard to escape. And we know from internal Facebook documents, the ones Frances Haugen leaked, the Facebook files.
Right, that was huge.
They reveal the company knew exactly how vulnerable the teenage brain is to emotion, novelty, rewards. And they consciously design their apps to maximize engagement, hook users, rather than prioritize their well-being or safety.
That's deeply disturbing.
It is. And it leads to real withdrawal symptoms when kids try to cut back: anxiety, irritability, insomnia, just this feeling of dysphoria. Ordinary life starts to feel boring, dull, without that constant digital stimulation, that digital drug.
This addictive design, it obviously impacts everyone, but hate really digs into something crucial here. Why does social media seem to harm girls so much more than boys?
Yeah, this is a critical piece.
Some initial studies might have seemed to show weak links, maybe looking at all screen time or mixing boys and girls, but Haidt argues if you really zero in on the data, focusing specifically on social media use and specifically on girls,
Then picture becomes much clearer.
yeah, he says you see a clear, consistent, and sizable link between heavy social media use and mental illness for girls.
It's quite stark when you look at it that way.
Yeah.
Girls, on average, spend significantly more time on social media than boys.
Okay.
And they tend to prefer the visually oriented platforms, Instagram, TikTok, which seem particularly problematic. Plus, girls tend to be more focused on what psychologists call communion motivations.
Meaning connection, belonging.
Exactly. That deep human need for connection and belonging. Social media promises that, but ironically, it often leaves those needs frustrated, unfulfilled.
And Haidt breaks down 4 specific reasons why it's worse for girls, right?
He does. First, visual comparisons. Girls are just generally more sensitive to visual comparisons. And these image-focused platforms constantly bombard them with curated, often unrealistic images, pushing down their sociometer.
Their internal gauge of social standing?
Yeah, their sense of acceptance, their worth. This fuels what he calls socially prescribed perfectionism, this relentless pressure to meet impossible external beauty and lifestyle standards.
Okay, that makes sense. What's next?
Second, relational aggression. Social media is an incredibly effective tool for relational aggression, spreading rumors, gossip, social exclusion, cyberbullying.
Things that happen offline too, but amplified online.
Massively amplified. And this type of aggression is far more damaging to girls' communion-focused needs, their desire for connection, than physical aggression typically is to boys.
Third,
Emotional contagion. Turns out, negative emotions like depression are actually more contagious than happiness.
really?
Yeah, and research shows they spread more easily through women's friendship networks. Social media creates these incredibly dense, interconnected digital networks, which allows for the rapid sociogenic spread of anxiety and depression.
Like trends catching on.
Exactly. We've even seen phenomena labeled mass social media-induced illness, like sudden spikes in non-epileptic Tourette's like tics or dissociative identity disorder symptoms, even surges in gender dysphoria diagnoses, all seeming to spread rapidly through online communities, particularly among girls.
Wow, that's unsettling. And the fourth reason?
Fourth, predation and harassment. Girls disproportionately face risks of sexual predation, online harassment, and blackmail. Things like the pressure to share nude photos, which then become social currency or tools for coercion.
Forcing them into that defend mode.
Constantly, it contributes to chronic anxiety, a feeling of being unsafe. So the bottom line is, while social media might increase the sheer quantity of social connections, it drastically reduces their quality. It leaves deep emotional needs unsatisfied and actually increases loneliness for all teens. But the impact seems profoundly worse for girls.
Okay, so after laying out this really complex, pretty bleak picture, what does this all mean for us? What can actually be done? This whole thing feels like a classic collective action problem, doesn't it?
That's exactly the term Haidt uses. It's where individuals, all acting in what they think is their own rational self-interest.
Like giving your kid a phone early so they don't feel left out.
Right, or being maybe too careful about letting them play outside unsupervised because you're worried about blame.
Yeah.
All those individual decisions actually lead to a worse outcome for everyone, for society as a whole. And escaping those kinds of traps, it requires genuinely collective responses. We can't just solve it parent by parent.
Absolutely. And thankfully, Haidt doesn't just diagnose the problem, he offers concrete solutions, starting with what schools can do, like right now.
Yeah, he's got some practical ideas.
He suggests two really powerful, relatively low-cost interventions. He calls them the two whales.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are the whales?
Going completely phone-free and becoming playful.
Phone-free and playful, okay. Let's start with phone-free.
We have these fantastic success stories like Mountain Middle School in Durango, Colorado. They banned phones for the entire school day way back in 2012.
Ahead of the curve.
Totally. And the results? Dramatic improvements, less cyberbullying, less sleep deprivation, less social comparison, and just a huge increase in actual community spirit, kids talking to each other.
Because most school bans, they're just during class time, right? Which isn't really effective.
Exactly. Kids hide them, or they're just glued to them the second class ends, in the hallways, at lunch. It still kills social interaction. Haidt argues you need a full-day ban. Phones away in lockers or maybe those locked pouches.
Makes sense. And UNESCO's big 2023 report backed this up globally, doesn't it? Linking mobile phone use directly to reduced educational performance, classroom disruption.
Yeah. And Haidt points out those declining test scores since around 2012. They coincide pretty neatly with smartphone adoption, suggest that attention fragmentation is a major factor.
And it speaks volumes, doesn't it, that many top tech execs choose to send their own kids to phone-free schools, like Waldorf schools.
It really does. A powerful tell. Okay, so that's phone-free. What about becoming playful?
This is about bringing back unstructured play. There's a great example of a teacher, Kevin Steinhardt, in South Carolina. He saw incredible improvements, happier kids, fewer discipline issues, fewer kids skipping school just by incorporating more unstructured free play into the school day.
So simple, but effective.
It naturally teaches those crucial social-emotional skills, negotiation, self-regulation, cooperation, way better than any worksheet can. So this means practical things like more recess time.
Yes. The current U.S. elementary average is, what, like 27 minutes?
Pathetic. Haidt points out it's less time than inmates get in maximum security prisons.
That's horrifying.
It is. And it means designing better playgrounds, too. Think adventure playgrounds with loose parts, building materials, tires, wood, or more natural play spaces that offer challenges. And maybe implementing fewer rigid rules, trusting kids more to self-govern to build that anti-fragility.
This could also be key for re-engaging boys, right? Who seem to be increasingly disengaging from the traditional school environment.
Absolutely. Longer, better recess could make a real difference, along with other things like more vocational training options and, frankly, more male teachers in K-12. Only about 24% are male currently.
Wow. Okay, and there's one more school initiative you mentioned.
Yeah, the Let Grow project. This is brilliant. It's basically a homework assignment for K-8 students. They have to do something new on their own.
Like what?
Could be walking the dog alone, going to a nearby store, cooking a simple meal, something that pushes their independence a little bit. The genius is it builds the child's competence and confidence, but maybe even more importantly, it increases the parent's trust in their child's capabilities. It helps break that negative feedback loop, that double helix of anxiety and doubt he talks about, that traps both kids and adults.
I love that. Okay, moving beyond schools, what about governments and the tech companies themselves? What's their role?
Haidt lays out clear steps here, too. First, and maybe most fundamentally, governments must assert a duty of care.
A legal responsibility.
Yes. Tech companies, driven by their business model, grabbing attention, maximizing engagement, as Sean Parker, Facebook's first president, openly admitted. They exploit psychological vulnerabilities. Governments have to step in and impose a legal duty of care specifically for minors, say, under 18.
Is anyone doing this?
Yes. The UK's Age-Appropriate Design Code, the AADC, from 2020 is a leading example. And it's already forced global changes like TikTok, limiting direct messages from strangers to teens worldwide. Now, California and other U.S. states are adopting similar common-sense laws focused on designing services with children's best interests in mind.
Okay, that's encouraging. What else?
Second, Haidt argues passionately that we need to raise the age of internet adulthood to 16.
From the current 13.
Yeah, that 13 number comes from COPIA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, from way back in 1998. It's basically a political compromise back then, and it's demonstrably too low for the kinds of immersive, addictive platforms we have today.
So why 16?
16 feels like a more reasonable, maybe more enforceable compromise. It would allow adolescents to get through that most vulnerable period of early to mid-puberty when the brain is undergoing massive changes before they get fully immersed in social media.
But how do you verify age online? That's always been the stumbling block.
It's tricky. But Haidt discusses emerging technologies, things like vouching networks, maybe blockchain tokens. He also proposes a simpler idea: device-based verification. Parents could register a phone or tablet as belonging to a minor. That way, companies and parents could share the responsibility more effectively. It's not perfect, but it's a start.
Okay. Duty of care, raise the age. What's the third government action?
Third is to actively incentivize more real-world experience. This starts with stopping the punishment of parents for letting kids have normal independence.
You mean the stories of parents getting investigated for letting kids walk to the park?
Exactly. We need more reasonable childhood independence laws, like those passed in Utah, Texas, Colorado, and a few other states. They protect parents who allow their children reasonable, age-appropriate, unsupervised freedom. They combat those vague neglect laws that have sometimes criminalized completely normal childhood activities.
That seems crucial for undoing the paranoid parenting trend.
It really is. Governments can also foster more child-friendly infrastructure. Think about zoning that encourages mixed-use neighborhoods where kids can actually walk to a local store or library, building safe walking and biking paths, scattering more playgrounds throughout communities, implementing school streets.
What are those?
Temporarily closing the streets right around schools to cars during drop-off and pickup times. It encourages walking, biking, reduces traffic chaos, and fosters community interaction right there on the pavement.
Simple but effective.
Yeah. And finally, governments can support things like vocational training, apprenticeships, wilderness programs, like a great tuition-free one in Connecticut. These provide invaluable real-world experiences, build that anti-fragility, and offer alternative pathways to adulthood beyond just the standard 4-year college track.
Okay, lots for schools and governments. Now let's bring it home. What about us, the parents? What can we do right now?
Haidt encourages a fundamental mindset shift here, moving away from being a carpenter, trying to meticulously shape our children into some predetermined form.
Right, perfecting them.
And towards being a gardener, providing a safe, nurturing environment, good soil, sunlight, water, but allowing for unpredictable natural flourishing, accepting they'll grow in their own unique way.
I like that analogy. So practically, what does the gardener do, especially for young kids, say 0 to 5?
For the little ones, the advice is pretty clear. Minimize screen time drastically. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry has guidelines. Basically, no screens under 18 months, except maybe video calls with grandma.
Okay.
Then very limited, high-quality, co-viewed educational screen time for 18 months to 5 years. Definitely avoid using screens as a digital pacifier just to quiet them down. And critically, remove all devices from bedrooms 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. Protect that sleep.
Okay, that's for the little ones. What about elementary and middle school, say ages 6 to 13?
This is a crucial period. Haidt strongly advises delaying smartphones until at least high school, ideally age 14 or later. If they genuinely need a phone for communication or safety, get them a basic phone, one without internet or apps.
The dumb phone.
Exactly. And simultaneously, work on increasing their real-world autonomy. Encourage walking or biking to friends' houses, maybe running a simple errand. Use those let-grow ideas. Promote sleepovers, they're great for social bonding, but maybe manage the phones during them. Have a central charging spot downstairs.
And prioritize play?
Definitely. Embrace Free Play Friday. Make unstructured social time a priority over yet another adult-supervised activity. Build community, too. Go camping. Try to form playborhoods with your neighbors where kids can just run between houses and play together, unsupervised.
Love that term, playborhoods. What about managing screens when they do have them?
Limit recreational screen time. There are guidelines out there. Quebec, for instance, suggests a max of 2 hours a day for 6 to 12-year-olds. But prioritize protecting in-person activity, and especially sleep over rigidly enforcing screen time limits down to the minute. Implement clear structure. Phone-free meals are huge. Maybe a digital Sabbath day, screen-free weeks during holidays.
And be aware of addiction signs.
Absolutely. Be vigilant. Look for signs of problematic use, chronic anxiety, or irritability. especially when separated from the device, lying about usage, losing interest in hobbies or friends offline. If you see those signs, seriously consider a digital detox, maybe a week or two, completely off.
And social media specifically?
Haid's recommendation is firm. Do not allow social media accounts before age 16, period. And talk to your preteens before they hit 16 about the real online risks, pornography exposure, cyberbullying, predators. Listen to their concerns openly, without judgment, so they feel they can come to you if something happens.
Okay, that's a lot for the middle years. What about older adolescents, teens 13 to 19?
For older teens, the focus shifts again. Increase their mobility, help them navigate public transport, learn to drive when appropriate, encourage those off-base excursions, letting them hang out independently with friends in third places.
Like cafes, parks, libraries.
Exactly. Places that aren't home or school, where they can socialize on their own terms, and also increase their responsibilities at home. Give them real chores, real contributions to the family. This helps them transition towards adulthood, building agency and self-reliance.
So it's about gradually increasing freedom and responsibility in the real world as you delay immersion in the virtual one?
That's a great way to put it. And Haidt also touches on something deeper, often overlooked: the spiritual dimension of this crisis.
Spiritual? How so?
He suggests the phone-based life induces a kind of spiritual degradation. He talks about this idea of a divinity axis, where virtuous actions, connection, awe, they elevate us, while base actions, cruelty, vanity, constant distraction, they degrade us.
And the phone pulls us downward.
His argument is that it tends to. Think about how the virtual world often undermines traditional practices that have given human life meaning for millennia.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Okay, like shared sacredness, that feeling of collective effervescence you get in a real-world ritual or gathering versus the fleeting, often shallow connections of online networks. Or embodied synchrony, moving together physically in dance or ritual versus disembodied, asynchronous interaction online.
I see.
Stillness and silence meditation or just quiet reflection versus the constant barrage of notifications. Self-transcendence, losing your sense of self in something larger, versus the intense focus on self-presentation and branding online. Being slow to anger, the tribalism and quick outrage cycles of social media, versus traditions emphasizing forgiveness. And finding awe in nature, the actual immersive experience, versus just looking at pretty pictures on a screen.
Wow. When you list them like that, the contrast is really stark.
It is. And this connects to his idea of the God-shaped hole, drawing on the philosopher Pascal, the sense of an innate human emptiness we all try to fill. If we don't consciously fill it with something noble and elevated, real connection, purpose, beauty, moments of awe, then modern society, especially through the fire hose of digital inputs, tends to fill it with, well, garbage, as Haidt bluntly puts it.
So we need to consciously curate our inputs.
Exactly. We have to actively take back control, choose experiences that pull us upward on that divinity axis, that genuinely nourish us, rather than just distract or degrade us.
So after all this, what does it all really mean for you listening right now? We've taken this deep dive into how childhood has been just radically rewired, pulled young people out of real-world communities, out of embodied experiences, and into these rapidly shifting, often isolating digital networks.
And this great rewiring, Kate argues compellingly, is the single biggest reason for this unprecedented tidal wave of adolescent mental illness we're witnessing today. It's not the only factor, of course, but it's the dominant one that shifted so dramatically around 2012.
But the good news, if there is good news here, is that change is possible. It's not inevitable that things stay this way. But, and this is the crucial part, it absolutely requires collective action.
Yes. One parent holding out on a smartphone isn't enough if all their kids' friends have one. One school banning phones doesn't work as well if the neighboring school doesn't.
Right. But we've seen how these solutions, phone-free schools, let-grow projects, smarter government regulations on tech, parents shifting to that gardener mindset, they can work together. They're not just individual fixes. They can create a synergy, a positive feedback loop to genuinely help bring childhood back down to earth.
Absolutely. It requires effort on multiple fronts simultaneously.
Okay, so as a final provocative thought for you to take away, consider the profound impact of the shared digital environment we're all swimming in, not just on mental health, which is critical, but on the very fabric of human connection, meaning maybe even our spiritual lives, as Haidt suggests. So the question is, what's one concrete step, maybe even a small one, that you will take this week to reclaim a little bit of the real world for yourself, or maybe for the children in your life?